All right, hello again. So in this video, we're going to go through kind of putting together a whole layout. It's mostly done because it would take a long time, right? The 17-hour video is not doing too well that I did earlier. But yeah, so here's what we're going to make. We're going to take this, we're going to make this file here about Mission College, which you are currently attending maybe. And then, so we got a header up here. We've got a little blurb here and the address and navigation bar. And then we've got a couple columns here, and then we've got some cards there. It's responsive, so if I resize it here, the navigation eventually goes vertical. And you can do that. You can also do like a hamburger menu, responsive menu, but this one we're just gonna make it go vertical here since there's only 4 links. The address goes away because there's not quite enough space, so just kind of showing you how you can hide and show things maybe on mobile. Those 2 columns there below that go to 1 eventually, and then on the bottom all these cards go from 1 column to 2 columns to 3 columns. If I inspect this and turn on the mobile, right, if I click right there and turn on the mobile inspector, then it looks like this, all single column, right? So a lot of the stuff you've seen before, some you haven't. Here's what we're starting with. We're starting with this, which is, like I said, a lot of it's done already, but it's obviously kind of messed up. And I've just made a file that you can start with and just add some code in. It's all CSS. I don't think we're doing anything to the HTML. The navigation is already done, but I'll show you that. So you need to start with this file. I think it's probably called final layout start. Makes sense, right? And then there is a CSS file called modern normalize. That's a CSS reset file to sort of make browsers behave similarly across browsers. It's sort of an update to the normalize file. You may have seen that before. There's also a nav file, nav.css, and that one is already done. I don't think you have to do anything with this one. And then I've added comments on every line, kind of talking about how it works. So we're just going to attach that. And you will see that commonly on websites. There might be an external style sheet used for navigation and one for typography, and not all the time, but sometimes. So that's already done for you. We just have to attach it. It's not attached yet. The images should all be in there. There's cards and an image of Gilmore Center and things like that. Yeah, so that's kind of what's going on. So let me hide that sidebar. We're just going to be working with this final layout start file, so I can get rid of that sidebar, and let me make sure this text is big enough for you guys to see on the internets. And then I'm going to move this over here a little bit, maybe a lot, so we have more space for the code. All right, and then you obviously have to preview it, so use your live preview and do that. And then we're just going to kind of go through here and look, and I've got to-dos in here to fix things and add some code in. So hopefully that'll kind of work for you guys. Let me get rid of this here. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so up at the top we've got the links to, and you've seen this before. Hopefully, a lot of this you've seen before. But the links to the 2 external style sheets. One is the more normalized file, modern normalize, and one is called nav.css. So you just have to uncomment this. Remember, you can select text and do command / or control / on a PC. And that will uncomment or comment text. And now you can see the navigation is working. Kind of gets a little thick right there. We could probably fix that maybe later, but I don't think we will. And then it goes to vertical like that. And the normalized file is doing some stuff, but not going to do a whole lot. There's also some Google fonts on here, so that's already in there for you. So let's just scoot down to the body there. And you can see that there's a font family already in there. So it's got a to-do, add a global image rule so all images scale down to fit. You have hopefully seen this before, but I wanted to put it in one more time so that we make sure we know how that works. So I'm just going to go img, right, which is going to style for images. It'll be all the images. You could always override it later with a class or something if you needed to. But why are we doing this? Let's look at this before. These images are bigger, they're not resizing, or this one isn't, right? They're not resizing with the browser. So we want to make them a little bit responsive so they don't get too big or stay too big. So we're going to say max width 100%. And then we're gonna say a height of auto. And now let's see if that's working. Yes, now you can see that image is scaling, right? If I get too small where it doesn't fit in its container, excuse me, if I get too small, it doesn't fit in its container, then it will get smaller. So there you go. So that will work on every image on the page. And like I said, you could always override it with some other style if you needed to, but I don't think we'd need to on this one. All right, let's scroll down to about line 82 where it says main content there. Add a unitless line height to improve readability of the paragraphs in 2-column section. So I left off the line height in this area here, and I could have put it on the whole body, which would probably be a good idea, but I'm going to put it on this just to show you what it's doing here. You could put it on the whole page, actually. But it's a pretty good idea to add some extra line height, or leading, right? That's the typographic term. So I'm going to go right below these. Whenever we see these two dudes, I'm just going to go below and actually do it. So I'm going to say line height 1.5, which is kind of like saying line height 150%. And now you can see that text, if I comment that out again. That text is a little dense, right? It's a little tight together. It's readable, of course. It's not like impossible, but it's good to have a little bit of breathing room with your text so that it's easier to read. So there you go. That's easy, right? So line height 1.5, it's about 150%. Just adds a little spacing. You'll see numbers from like 1.4 to 1.6, sometimes 1.3, maybe even 1.7, but generally around there. All right. So up here is called the masthead. So we're going to do some stuff with that. By the way, we're working on the mobile view here. So we're doing this mobile first. So it's going to look, probably go to the mobile view, but I'll just leave it like this. I think it'll be about the same. So we're going to do the mobile styles first, and then we're going to add on some styles later with some media queries for the desktop. So I should have it at this sort of mobile size to start with. So what we're going to do is we're going to give the masthead a fixed height. So the masthead is this area up here. It has an ID, right? You know, the hash mark means an ID, or the octothorpe if you want to get fancy. So let's give it a height of 200 pixels, so 200 px. So now it is 200 pixels high when by default. And then we're going to give it some pad, or turn off the padding. Not sure there is any, but we're just going to say padding 0 to make sure there's no padding. And then we're also going to say position relative. Actually, let's leave that. Well, sure, let's put that on, because it's going to do something later. But yeah, we'll just put it on now. So we're giving that positioning context. And if you remember from the CSS positioning video, if you want to position something absolutely in a specific area, like pod 1, that's what we're doing. It's even in there. If you want to position something absolutely inside of a certain container, you need to give the outside container, the parent container, what's called positioning context. So if I leave this off and I position something absolutely, it'll just position relative to the whole browser window, which could be, you know, if I say go to the bottom, it's going to go down here. But if I say go to the bottom now, if it's inside the masthead, which I'm talking about this part, it'll be at the bottom of that. So that probably made no sense, but I'll try to come back and remember and turn that off to show you what happens. You guys remind me. Oh, I can't hear you. Okay, so we're going to go down. So I've got some background in here, right? I've got background color, background image, background repeat, background position. I thought I would just do, we would do the shorthand for background just to see how that works. And then add a size on there. So I'm going to say background, and it's white, right? So we're using the same stuff as we had here. And then URL, and then the URL is in the image folder, and it's called Gilmore Center 3. And then we're going to add no repeat. And then left top for the positioning, which it probably is already, but we'll add that in there. And then that's it. So now we've done that as a shorthand. And then we're also going to add, so we did the same thing we had here, but as a shorthand. You could comment this out, but this should override it. So either way, I just wanted to show you guys how you do that as a shorthand. But we are going to do background size as well. So let's add background size. And let's do auto and 250 pixels, which means auto width and a height of 250. So there you go. So we just messed with this background image a little bit, positioned it. We put all this in back as a little bigger so you can see it better. Put all this back in as a shortcut or a shorthand, not shortcut. All right, I think that's good for masthead. So let's go down to tagline. So tagline is where it says, I don't know if you guys saw that. It says Mission College, where today's students meet tomorrow's opportunity. Ooh, that's good. I wrote that myself. No AI involved, I think. Okay, so let's go down to about line 120 something. Oh yeah, there it is, tagline. And we want to align this text to the right side of the overlay bar. So I'm going to say text align right. And this is going to get all pretty messed up until we add in all these styles, but you'll see, maybe you'll see what it's doing here. So we're just going to add text align right, which should make it go to the right. So now that text is to the right and this text is to the left, which is correct. So the address, here's the address right here. So we're gonna hide the address on small screens. Just as a demo of like, you can do that. If you decide you don't have enough space for everything on the small screen, you could hide the address. I don't know if you'd actually hide the address because maybe somebody would need to know that, but you get the idea. So I'm gonna say, how do I hide something? One way to do that is say display none. And it disappeared, right? So the address disappeared, and now we just see the tagline, which is aligned to the right. So that's what it's gonna look like on our mobile view. There's no address up there. I probably would put, like I said, I would put the address on there. Maybe it's in the footer. I don't have it in the footer, but that would be a good idea. But we're gonna make it appear again on the desktop, so that's kind of why I did that. Okay, so let's see, card grid. So that's these guys down here. Right now, what's going on with these guys? They're just stacking. They're just big boxes, and they have some text up here, an image, and then some more text down there. They're how you can take classes at Mission. Days, evenings, hybrid, flex, means in person and online same time. Weekends, nobody wants to do that. Or in space. I made that. You can't take them in space. Well, maybe by the time you do this, you can. But anyway, so it says turn this grid into a CSS grid container. So we're going to use CSS grid on this a little bit for these guys. So what CSS grid is good for is, and maybe you remember this from earlier, but Flexbox is good either rows or columns. We're actually going to use Flexbox up here for these two columns. There's only one, right? It looks like one right now, but it's going to be two. And then CSS grid is good for rows and columns, 2 dimensions, right? So Flexbox is good 1 dimension, horizontal or vertical. I'm trying to make my cursor bigger. There we go. Horizontal or vertical. And CSS grid is good for both directions, horizontal and vertical at the same time. A grid, duh. That's why it's called CSS grid, I think. That would make sense. Okay, so we're gonna turn this into a CSS grid container. On a small screen, we want a single column, so set grid template columns to 1 FR, so it's kind of giving you a clue there. Add some gap to space the cards apart. All right, so we've got already have in there a padding of 10 on the card grid, so we're gonna go down, we can go below that or we can go above it. Let's actually go above it. Let's say display grid. And anything happen yet? I don't think so, because we didn't put any columns in. There's no columns, so it's not really doing anything yet. So then we want to say grid template columns. Grid template columns, and we're going to say 1 FR. So that is 1 column that takes up the whole space. So it's still doing the same thing. We want 1 column on mobile, which is very typical, right? Mobile, you often want things to stack vertically, so 1 column is good. If I did one and then one FR, you're not doing this, but if I did do that, oh, look at that. It's 2 columns. Or if I did one FR, it is 3 columns. Or if I did one FR, that's a fraction, right? The FR is one fractional unit. Oh, I just did poorly. There's 4 columns. So 1, 2, 3, 4, right? So it's a fractional unit. So if there's 4 in there, there's 4 columns. We only want 1 on mobile. That would look terrible. That looks terrible, right? Even if I get smaller, like look at that, that's terrible. I want 1, so I'm gonna delete all those. So I got grid template columns, 1 FR, so I got 1 column. And then we want a little bit of space in there, so it tells you we want a little bit of space, so we're gonna say gap. And then we're gonna say a gap of 1 EM. So that added this little space right there. So it's space between. It's kind of like a margin, but for CSS grid, and it also works on Flexbox as well. So now we've got those actually look fine. That's how we want them to look on mobile. They're just stacked up little cards with the different ways you can take classes admission, except of course you can't go into space yet, or maybe you can. You guys are watching this from space. You're like, we're already in space. That's awesome. I wish I was there. Okay, so the next one is the individual cards. I think it's individual cards. They actually already kind of look okay, but we're going to add in, make them into Flexbox. So we're going to say display flex. So we're making these into Flexbox as the individual cards. Since they go sideways, and we probably didn't really have to do this, but I wanted to show you that. So if we say display flex, by default, Flexbox goes horizontally. Then we're going to say flex direction. I just want to practice with Flexbox, actually. Flex direction, and we want to say column. So now it's back the way it was. It's in a column. We want to align item center. Right? And then we want to have them start at the beginning of the flex container. So that's justify content flex start. So there you go. So that's that. So now they kind of look the same as they did before. But I wanted to make sure that you guys knew how that works with display flex and flex direction column. They were just stacking before, because they're in this column already. But yes, there's a little bit of practice with Flexbox. You could make them go sideways, but I don't think we're not gonna make them do that. Okay, so now we're gonna go down to the first media query. So remember media queries, this says at media screen and min width 576. So that means we're looking at, remember how media queries work? It means if these are true, we're on a screen and we're at least 576 pixels wide, we're gonna do this stuff, right? So it goes between this guy and where's the rest? Where's the end of it? Down here, that guy. So most of this is in here, but we're gonna add a few more. There's actually one more media query down here at the bottom for 768. So that's because we have 2 different breakpoints we want to use. So breakpoints again are, when do you want to change your layout, right? So right now it looks fine on mobile. That's kind of what we wanted, I think. But when we go out to desktop, that is not good, right? We still got 1 column for these and they're huge and that doesn't really work. And then we want 2 columns for this. And then we want to put our address back. So there's a few things we need to fix on the desktop. So that's called mobile first. You start with your mobile styles first, and then you add on styles for the desktop. Okay, so we're at 576, working in that section. We're gonna go down to the address. Remember the address is invisible at this point. So to make it visible again, remember we said display none. We're just gonna say display block, which was the way it already was anyway. So now we're back to where we were, but this is not quite right? So this whole thing If you didn't know it, this whole thing is in a pod, in a thing called pod. Let me go to inspect. So this whole thing is in a thing called pod 1, and then there's a tagline in there, and there's the address in there over here. You guys can't see. So there's pod 1. It's got the tagline and the address in there. So we're going to use that, and it's a div. It's just a generic container, right? We just said we want our address to be visible. Now we're going to turn the flex overlay bar, this thing, into a flex container so that they are next to each other instead of sitting on top of each other. So how do we do that? Well, it's pretty easy. We just say display flex. Now it's a flex box. Oh, look at that. So now they're next to each other. So this one was first in the code, so it's on the left, and this is the second one in the code, so it's on the right. We want them in the middle and some other stuff, though, so we have to do a little bit more. We're going to say justify content. This is how you line things up. And we're going to say center. So they're still centered, but we will need to make them the same size. Right now, this one's taking up more space because of the lines of text, but we want to make them the same size. So we're going to go down to where it says pod 1 div. So that was the pod 1. That's this whole container. Pod 1 div, that selector means, what does that mean? That means any div which is inside of something with a class of pod 1. So these two are divs. That's a div and that's a div. So we're styling the individual divs in there. We're going to say flex shorthand 0, 1, and 300 pixels. And we could have done that, we could have done that some different ways. But this is flex grow, flex shrink, and basis. Flex basis. We could probably also do, so that means it can't grow bigger, but it can shrink. They can shrink. And we want them to try to be 300 pixels. If I also put, or if I just put flex 1, it would probably do the same thing. That's a common way that people do even columns. But let's just leave it this way to see how you could do that a couple of different ways. All right. So I think that is good. All right, so let's go down to card grid. So that's these guys down here, right? So right now this is not doing what we want. We want to make some different columns. So we're going to use the add some CSS grid in here. So it says switch to grid to responsive multi-column layout using repeat with auto fit and min max. Cards should be at least 300 pixels wide and stretched to fill the row. Ooh, this is like a puzzle. Why did I write it this way? I think it's kind of fun. Maybe? No? Probably not. Okay, so we got card grid. So we're going to do grid template columns because we're talking about columns, right? Remember if I just put 1FR, 1FR, there's going to be 2 columns, but there's going to be 2 columns no matter what. Even if it gets, well, we get down to there. We get below 576, but it won't get any more columns. We want to use, we're going to do a little bit of fancier thing where we're going to make it fit as many columns as it can into that space with a minimum size. So this is a little bit funky, but let's see, and maybe you've seen this before. You probably have seen this before in some other video. I'm going to say repeat, and then I'm going to put parentheses, and then I say auto fit, and then a comma, and then min max, which sounds like a streaming channel, streaming service. I just thought. And then some more parentheses, yeesh, and then 300 px, and then a comma, and then 1FR. I think that's it. Let's see if that's working. It is. All right, so check this out. So at a mobile view, it's 1 column. Then when it has space, it makes 2 columns. And then when it has space, it has 3 columns. So we just did, I didn't even actually have to put this in the media query because this would work outside the media query. I should have thought of that before I did it this way. But it also works inside the media query. Because what it's doing is, this is a way that you can actually do responsive columns without using a media query. So what does this mean? This means repeat means make as many columns as you can. Autofit means make as many columns as you can that fit. Min max means they have to be a minimum of 300 pixels and a maximum of 1 FR. Remember when we did 1 FR, it was 1 column, right? So the maximum width is 1 column, or all the space, 1 fraction. The minimum size is 300. Let's see if I can get this to show us how wide these are when I resize. Maybe. I'm going to try it. I guess not. Is it going to let me do it? No. Thought we might be able to see the numbers change. But that's what's going on, right? So if there's space if there's 600 pixels wide, enough plus the pad, plus the gap and everything, it's going to make 2 columns. If you get around 900 pixels wide, it's going to make 3 columns. And it never gets wide enough to get 4, but it would get 4 if there was space, but there's not. That's pretty awesome, right? All right, so that is it for that. So we still have the last thing to do here is this main content is always 1 column. These line lengths are too long, probably. They're going to be a little bit tough to read. So at those long line lengths, we want to split that into 2 columns. So there's one more breakpoint. So I wanted to do that breakpoint, this one here, because I wanted to do it earlier at 5. What did we do it at? 576 or something like that. The second one we're going to do at 768. So we have another media query, media screen and min width 768. And then we've got main content. We're going to turn it into a flex container so the 2 columns sit side by side, use space between and a gap for the gutter. What does all that mean? All right. So how do we turn it into a flex container? We say display flex. Now it's a flex container. And then we want to use the space between. Is it's already doing it? Let's see. Oh, it is, yeah. It already has that. We haven't sized it yet, but let's go ahead and add the rest of it. So I'm going to say justify content and space between. Right there. So it's going to put any extra space in between, but there's no space between yet. But there will be when we add the gap. So we'll say gap of 2 EM. Now there's a gap. So space between, justify content, this turns it into a Flexbox, right? Justify content space between puts the space between, and then the gap puts the actual space. If I turn off justify content space between, where does the space go? I guess it's going in between anyway. We need to do a couple more lines to see some of this stuff actually happen. Actually, one more line. We're on the last part. All right, so now we're going to go down below column 1 and column 2. This one is column 1. If I inspect it, that's column 1, and the other one is column 2. That makes sense, right? And you don't want to say, usually you don't want to say like left column or right column because they may switch sides. You never know. So probably don't want to use sides on that. Just for as an aside. All right, so we're going to say flex 1. What that does is it ends up giving you equal width columns most of the time. It's actually a little more complicated than that, but it's used quite a bit to just do equal columns. So you say flex 1. So now they're both the same size. You can see that there's the 2 EM space in the middle. And at 768, if I get down below 768, it goes to 1 column. Maybe that was a little too early, but we'll leave it. You get the idea, right? It's actually okay. Yeah, so it changes about right there. From 1 column to 2 columns. And then this changes whenever it gets to those certain sizes, 300, when there's space for 300 pixels across. Okay, I think that is it. So hopefully some of that was review. We're just kind of putting it all together in this one and kind of going from, a sort of half-baked web page to a finished one that's responsive. Uses a couple of techniques that we've gone over. Uses Flexbox, uses CSS Grid, all kinds of other stuff. Remember that Some of these files are pretty commented, like the navigation one, so you can see what things are doing. But I think that's about it for this layout. So I'll talk to you again later.